Right now, Mike Harmon of Danville is the Republican incumbent for the Auditor. So you have the Treasurer, the Auditor, the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and the Agricultural Commissioner. You have 5 other executive positions in addition to the Governor and the Lieutenant Governor. So Mike Harmon, he's running unopposed, so he's going to be the GOP nominee in November. The 3 Democrats are Kelsey Coots of Louisville, Sheri Donahue of Frankfort, and Chris Toby of Anchorage. So Kelsey, Sheri, and Chris is running against each other, and then the victor is going to run against Mike Harmon. Now, let's talk about Mike Harmon. So before he was an auditor, he was an insurance salesman. So how did this insurance salesman rise to power? In fact, Mike Harmon's rags to riches story is just unbelievable. It's almost like, why? How did this happen? Okay, so he's the auditor of the public accounts currently right now. When he ran in 2015, he ran against Adam Edelin. Adam Edelin, who was one of the most effective auditors in Kentucky's history. He put Richie Fulmer in jail, he was finding millions of dollars, and he was putting people in jail. So Adam Edelin was an incredible auditor. He outspent Mike Harmon 20-1. Mike Harmon didn't even have enough money to buy a TV ad. But he did have a bunch of GOP talking points. He laughed at the Democrats, and he said he was a Republican, and he talked about a bunch of issues that has nothing to do with auditor. He's pro-life. What's that got to do with being an auditor? Well, he's pro-life, so, maybe that somehow bleeds into it. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. So Mike Harmon rose to power on a Republican wave. So Donald Trump was elected president. Kentucky couldn't wait to go out and vote for Donald Trump and voted for Matt Bevin and voted for all these Republicans. So he rode on a Republican wave into the auditor's office. And he defeated Adam Edelin. Adam Edelin, one of the most impressive politicians Kentucky has ever produced. So, he went around saying a bunch of GOP talking points, whereas Carl Nett makes fun of Democrats. He also says that he would put his life on the line for Democrats, too. But Mike Harmon, he just sounds like it's just a total asshole. The poor are poor because they're lazy, Democrats are stupid, and then, as the auditor, he's going to stop abortion. So, I want to mention this. They try to make it look like Adam Edelin is the loser, and Andy Beshear is the winner, because in 2015, Andy Beshear is going to beat Whitney Westerfield, and he's going to become the Attorney General. So, because Andy Beshear defeated his rival, Whitney Westerfield, they say he's a winner, so therefore he's got the winner's glow, and he can take that winner's glow into the governor's mansion. Now, what's fucked up about this is that's not really the case at all. There were such razor-thin margins. This race is going to be skin tight. All these races are going to be skin tight because you actually got more Democrats than you have Republicans. But Republicans are pretty loyal, and then Democrats switch over. So Mike Harmon beat Adam Edelin by 52% to 48%, by 4 points, which is, by the skin of his chinny chin chin. He won by 4 points. So it's not like Mike Harmon, just completely crushed Adam Edelin, and it's not like Andy Beshear completely crushed Whitney Westerfield. Andy Beshear actually only won by 2,200 votes, by 2%, something very tiny margin. So by just 2%, 0.2%. So Andy Graham Beshear beat Whitney Westerfield by the skin of his chinny chin chin. He didn't pummel him, he barely won. And so did Mike Harmon. He barely won. So it's not like Adam Edelin was totally trashed and then Andy Beshear was the super winner. Andy Beshear barely won and Adam Edelin barely lost. So the 3 Democrats for auditor, again, just for repetition's sake. I heard that name recognition is the number 1 reason why people vote for anybody. Kelsey Coots of Louisville, Sheri Donahue of Frankfort, and Chris Toby of Anchorage. The auditor's office started in 1792, and it became an elected position in 1850. So the auditor wasn't always an elected position. You want elected positions, because if they're not accountable to the people, they're not going to be held to account to anybody. So to start with this auditor's race, this is about the 3 Democrats, but we have to talk about Mike Harmon. So who is Mike Harmon? What's he done? What's his successes? So he, hates the Democrats and he's pro-life. How did that interpret to policy? Well, Mike Harmon, I don't see really much of anything that he's done audits, but it's filled with legalese. Nobody knows really what he's saying, and I think really he's not saying shit. He's saying get your shit together. So he's not really, auditing and throwing people in jail and cleaning up the system and saving Kentucky millions of dollars. He's been in power for 3.5 years. He's an asshole when it comes to Democrats, so I don't think Carl Nett hates Democrats, but Mike Harmon does. He's got contempt for Democrats. There's only two or three things that I came across that Mike Harmon had audited. He put out a press release, and then there was only one news story about an audit that he had discovered some people were stealing. So October 11th, 2017, Mike Harmon, it was reported that a former Jackson County treasurer had wrote $114,000 worth of checks to herself, and that included a $60,000 check from the Restricted Chemical Stockpile Emergency Preparedness Program. They're supposed to help get ready for emergencies in case the chemicals in Jackson County go out of control. So here's some money for some emergencies, and she's like, oh, thanks, and put it in her pocket. So Mike Harmon was able to find a corrupt Jackson County treasurer who stole over $100,000. We also found out the auditor, he audited the Office of Technology, and we found out that Matt Bevin had hired one of his Army buddies, and he gave him a raise immediately, a $215,000 raise. So that Jackson County treasurer, she wasted $100,000, but Matt Bevin is, paying his Army buddy $215,000 more. He got a raise. That's a nice little raise, isn't it? This must be one of the most important people ever. $250,000, isn't that how much the governor makes? So Mike Harmon found that out. Mike Harmon found that Army buddy was getting paid $215,000 more. The Jackson County treasurer was writing over $100,000 worth of checks to herself that she shouldn't have been writing, that to herself. I don't think she went to jail. He said he turned it over to the FBI and some other people. But the other thing he found out with the Office of Technology is that there was $1.5 billion in errors. $1.5 billion in errors, including the $316 million error with the pensions. So that seems like that's big news, but $1.5 billion in errors? Anybody going to jail? Anybody being charged with anything? Who's stealing this money? How come we don't see who they are? How come no charges have been filed? $316 million is in error. $1.5 billion is in error. And then he also did an audit of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services where he overstated payments to vendors, where the Cabinet for Health and Family Services had overstated payments to vendors by $23 million. So really, those are all good things. He's going to save money, hopefully, unless, Matt Bevin keeps his Army buddy. I guess the Jackson County treasurer had to pay that back. The errors in the Office of Technology, what do you do when you find $1.5 billion worth of errors? It seems like, you probably should do something about that. That's, in errors, that just means it's just, you didn't put the money here and it's supposed to go over there, or was there stealing? Was there actual crimes? And then they overstated payments, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. So how come nobody went to jail? There's this thieving or possible thieving, but nobody's going to jail. So these are four, good little instances of Mike Harmon actually doing his job. He brags about how he's the first to audit the administrative office of the courts in Kentucky Wired. So there's a broadband project he audited, and then the administrative offices of the courts. So that's the judicial branch. He audited that too. So he brags that he's auditing things, but not that he's, finding the thieves and saving Kentucky money. Mike Harmon did report on Twitter he's hiring 3 new auditors. That was on May 17th, just 4 days prior to the primary. So that's via Twitter. And his Twitter feed reactions is embarrassing. He gets about 1 or 2 retweets, and that's it. Nobody's commenting. Nobody's liking anything. It just seems like it's a desert out there. So He already has $66,000 in his campaign coffers this year. So Mike Harmon comes with a war chest. He didn't have a war chest before, but now he has a war chest. So that's Mike Harmon. He's been in there for 3.5 years. He's the auditor. You still got a pension crisis, poverty all over the place. So is it auditor? Are you really auditing? Are you really saving people money? What are you doing? You know, it doesn't seem like it's much. It seems like you could do, you're not no Adam Edelin, you're not Crit Llewellyn, you're Mike Harmon, right? So you're auditing, but you're not really finding nothing out. Now there's 3 Democrats who are running against each other to get the auditor nomination from the Democratic Party. So Kelsey Hayes Coots of Louisville is very impressive. She has very impressive rhetoric, and even though she doesn't know jack shit about auditing, she sounds like she could actually run a team of auditors. So she's native to Owensboro. She says she's going to be a watchdog like Crit Llewellyn. She says that Crit Llewellyn is the gold standard. But what about, Adam Edelin? He did a pretty good job. He put Richie Farmer in jail. So she says that Mike Harmon is asleep at the wheel. So you're having all this stuff that's going on, but really he's just kind of a rubber stamp. He's asleep at the wheel. All this corruption, all this money's being wasted. You have a bunch of thieves, but he's not catching any of them. Kelsey Hayes Coots is a political science major. Kelsey Hayes Coots is a political science major from the University of Kentucky. She has $53,000 in her coffers. So in terms of the media, they always compare and contrast who's got the most money. So Mike Harmon has $66,000, and Kelsey Hayes Coots has a respectable $53,000 in donations. Kelsey Hayes Coots is going to audit the pensions and the schools and the health care. Kelsey Hayes Coots is going to audit everybody. Kelsey Hayes Coots wants to democratize the auditor's office to make it more accessible to the people. Kelsey Hayes Coots wants to publish all the monies in the auditor's office online. So she wants to say, here's where every dime is being spent in the auditor's office, and publish it for everybody to see. That's a great idea. She wants to democratize the auditor's office. That's great rhetoric. She's going to be a watchdog. That's perfect. So email, text alert system for audits in their county. So if you're in Jefferson County and there's something being audited there, she's going to have an email and text alert system to let you know what's going on. That's connecting folks directly to the government. That's good. That's good stuff. She wants to modernize the auditor's website. She says Mike Harmon's auditor's website looks like it was made in 1994. She wants more audits in public education, so there's millions of dollars being spent in school. Is that money being spent right? Pensions, health care. She's going to audit everything and everybody that she can audit, which really, that's the kind of auditor I want. She's going to have a simple front page of audits, so that way communities know what's going on. Mike Harmon has all this legalese. You got to sift through all of it, and it might say, hey, there's a problem here, there's a problem there, but it doesn't say, this person was stealing, this person's responsible, this is what we need to do. So it almost seems like, I don't want to, I'm not alleging anything, but it feels like it would be easy to audit something, go audit a school, and then get to talking to him, and then you get to be friends with him, and then you just say, well, I audited you, but I didn't convict you. I didn't make it look like you were the criminals you actually were, and so some sort of deal is brokered. So you need an honest person so that type of shit doesn't happen. So she's talking about how she's a leader. She's a Louisville teacher. She's served on the Site-Based Decision-Making Council, which is democracy. She's a union member. So she's a teacher who's proud to be a union member. That's the opposite of Julie Chancellor, who is also a teacher in Louisville. And she, robbed me or was part of a conspiracy to steal $60,000 away from me. Now, they want to, Kelsey Hayes Coots wants to make it easier for Kentucky whistleblowers to report corruption to the auditor's office with the current Safe House program, SAFE. Looks like an acronym, Safe House program. She wants Kentucky whistleblowers to report corruption. So she wants to make it easier for people that see corruption to go to the auditor's office and say, hey, this school or this hospital or this pension fund manager, these people need to be audited. She started the Kentucky United 120 Strong. Now, nobody told me about there being 120 counties. Maybe it's just obvious, but I remember wanting to do the Kentucky 120, where I traveled to every county and talked to them. Now, the Kentucky United 120 strong, I don't want to say I'm planting seeds, but that's fucking badass. That's what the Kentucky 120 would have turned into. The Kentucky United 120 strong were when the teachers protested the broken pension system. Matt Bevin had a sewer bill where he was going to fuck over all the public workers. The teachers stood up. And one of those teachers was Kelsey Coots, and she controlled District 3 or Zone 3 of the Kentucky United 120 strong. So she's a teacher, she's an activist, she's standing up, she seems like a good leader, she's strong, she's good on the rhetoric, she's got endorsements from lots of unions and state representatives. So her campaigning and her politics seems to be better than both Sheri Donahue and Chris Tobey. And then she also had this nice little line. She says that sunlight in government is the great disinfectant. So you want honesty in government, then make it transparent. So I like a lot of what Kelsey Coots of Louisville, native to Owensboro, is talking about. So you got Kelsey Coots, and then you got Sheri Donahue and Chris Tobey. So Sheri Donahue, she's a Christian. She comes out of Frankfurt. She stood up to the billion-dollar contracts of the MIC. So the military-industrial complex, she's actually audited the military-industrial complex. So they were sitting there. She'd karate chop Russian hackers into pieces. She's an industrial engineer, a security specialist. She's a native of Louisville. She's audited for 20 years multi-million-dollar projects for the U.S. Navy. She's worked for the FBI, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, cybersecurity measures for Humana. Sheri says that Mike Harmon works for Matt Bevin, and she liked Adam Edelin and Crit Llewellyn, who are independent of the governor's office, and has raised $125,000 for the campaign. So Sheri Donahue has raised the most money out of everybody so far. She's got $125,000 in her coffers, whereas Kelsey Coots has $53,000, and Mike Harmon has $66,000. So she has more money in the bank for her campaign and her war chest than the current incumbent. So she's very impressive. She has a very impressive resume. And, there's a lot of good things to be said about Sheri Donahue and Kelsey Coots. But the reason why I kind of look over them, because Chris Tobey of Anchorage, he's been working on this pension problem for quite some time. He's got 2 books out, Kentucky Fried Pensions, 2013 and 2018. And he has just such an extensive knowledge on this. And he even got a Huffington Post article that says, watch out hedge funds, watch out Wall Street. This little tiny race here in Kentucky might bring the power. One of the biggest pit bull watch dogs in U.S. history. So he's going to be, he's going to be awesome. The fact that they're sitting there warning Wall Street and they're paying attention to this little tiny race in Kentucky of the Auditor. So because Chris Tobey of Anchorage is so impressive, Sheri Donahue, if she would have ran in another year, or maybe as an independent or something, but to run up against Chris Tobey, I guess I just have such a good liking for Chris Tobey. I've been following him for quite some time. And he makes good comments. He's been making comments about the pension system here and there. He gets quoted all over the place. So because he is so awesome, I think Kentucky should vote for Chris Tobey over Sheri Donahue and Kelsey Coots. But I want that Chris Tobey to look at what Kelsey Coots is doing. Look at her. She's getting endorsements. She's going around making speeches, getting pictures, and raising money. So her politicking is better than Chris Tobey. Chris Tobey doesn't seem to be getting much reaction on his Facebook and Twitter pages, so he only gets a couple likes here and there. And Sheri Donahue, the only thing I could say about Sheri Donahue and one thing about Kelsey, one thing about Sheri Donahue, she just has those weird eyes, looks like a psycho. And so, that's not a total disqualifier, but I need to get to know her a little bit more before I'll be able to, trust her with auditing Kentucky. She's got the experience. She's got the resume. She's even for legalized marijuana, so she's got a lot of progressive issues. So I haven't got to know her enough, but it's just Chris Toby is just such a badass. Even so, another badass like Sheri Donahue, Chris Toby still wins. And then on Kelsey Coots, she's, you know, for somebody who's got no auditor's experience, she has a remarkable campaign, but she has no auditor's experience. What is she doing? I guess it's not that hard to audit somebody. Let's open your books. Let's see what you've been doing. So I guess maybe you could learn on the job, or you could put yourself, you know, some professionals around you. But if you're going to run for Secretary of State, you need to know how to do elections. If you're going to run for Attorney General, you probably should know the law. If you're going to run for Auditor or Treasurer, you probably should know a little something about money. So Chris Toby, I want to talk about Chris Toby for a while here, okay? So he actually told on Kentucky, he told the Securities and Exchange Commission about the corruption in Kentucky's pensions. He's only got $39,000 in his campaign coffers. So he's actually getting the less out of all these candidates in terms of donations for his campaign. $39,000 compared to $125, $66, $50-something thousand. So he's number 4. The media probably shouldn't even listen to him, right? He's only got $39,000.
Now I'll answer your question, Renee. I'm not going to tap dance around it. I'm not a career politician. I'm not using this job to become governor or senator, nothing like that. I believe in the 24,000 studies that have been done on cannabis. That's 3.4 studies a day. That's including Christmas and Easter over the last 20 years.